Welcome to our study material on the living world. This set of notes and lectures is designed to give you a complete understanding of the first unit, which focuses on diversity in the living world. It's specifically tailored for Biology Class 11, Chapter 1. Throughout this unit, we'll explore the incredible variety of life forms, their characteristics, and how they are classified. Let's dive into this fascinating topic together. On this slide, we are focusing on understanding life by exploring its defining features and biological characteristics. To truly grasp what life is, we need to look at the fundamental traits that all living organisms share. These include things like the ability to grow, reproduce, respond to stimuli, and maintain homeostasis. By examining these characteristics, we can distinguish living things from non-living matter and better appreciate the complexity and diversity of life forms around us. This foundation is crucial as we move deeper into the study of biology and the principles that govern living systems. Life can be understood as a unique and complex organization of molecules that interact through biochemical reactions. These reactions are crucial because they drive essential processes like growth, development, and the ability to respond and adapt to the environment. When we talk about a living system, we refer to an organism that is not just a collection of parts, but a self-replicating and evolving entity. It regulates itself and interacts dynamically with its surroundings, responding to external stimuli. So, in essence, life is characterized by complexity, continuous change, and the capacity to maintain itself amidst varying conditions. Here we have some key characteristics that define living organisms. First, growth. This refers to the increase in mass and cell numbers. Interestingly, growth can be observed not only in living things but also in some non-living objects through external accumulation. Next is reproduction, which involves the production of offspring. However, reproduction is not an absolute defining feature of life since some living organisms can be completely sterile. Finally, metabolism is the sum of all biochemical reactions within a living body. This is crucial because metabolism is considered a 100% defining characteristic of life. Together, these features help us distinguish living organisms from non-living things. When we talk about growth, it's important to understand that it has two key attributes. First, growth can be observed in both living and non-living things, but the nature of this growth differs significantly. For instance, non-living things like mountains, boulders, and sand mounds grow through what we call extrinsic growth, meaning they increase in size by accumulating material on their outer surfaces. On the other hand, living organisms display intrinsic growth, which occurs from within. This internal growth is driven by cellular processes and is what fundamentally distinguishes living beings from non-living objects. Therefore, growth alone cannot be used as a defining feature of life since external growth happens in non-living things as well. Digging a bit deeper, growth in living organisms involves two aspects, an increase in mass and an increase in number. The increase in mass results from the accumulation of internal cellular matter, while the increase in number comes from cell division processes where new cells are produced. It's also interesting to note the differences between plants and animals. Plants have continuous cellular division throughout their lifespan, allowing them to keep growing indefinitely. In contrast, animals have a more limited growth period, after which cell division slows down significantly or stops altogether. Understanding these nuances helps clarify why growth, while important, cannot solely define life but remains a crucial characteristic to study. Let's talk about the different modes of reproduction. There are two main types, asexual and sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, organisms reproduce without the fusion of gametes, producing offspring genetically identical to the parent. Examples include fungal spores, budding as seen in yeast and hydra, true regeneration like in planaria, and fragmentation, which happens in moss protonema and filamentous algae. Sexual reproduction, on the other hand, involves the fusion of gametes. This results in offspring with genetic variation, which is important for the survival and evolution of species. However, it's important to note that not all living organisms reproduce. Some healthy, active organisms cannot reproduce at all. Classic examples are mules, which are sterile hybrids, worker bees who are infertile, and certain human couples who face infertility. Because of this, reproduction cannot be considered an absolute defining characteristic of all living organisms. It's a key feature for many, but not an essential property for all life forms. Every living cell is a bustling hub of activity, with thousands of biochemical reactions happening all at once. This vast network of chemical processes is what we call metabolism. It's important to understand that metabolism is unique to living organisms. No non-living object displays this complex interplay of reactions. Even when metabolic reactions are studied outside of cells, in cell-free systems or in vitro, these reactions are considered living processes but not living organisms on their own. In essence, metabolism is a fundamental characteristic that defines life itself. It's the continuous chemical machinery that powers every living being. When we talk about the basic unit of life, we are referring to the cell. It's important to understand that while non-living things may have molecular structures, they do not possess any cellular architecture. This cellular structure is unique to living organisms and is found in every form of life. Essentially, all living things are made up of cells, and these cells serve as the fundamental building blocks, both structurally and functionally. It's also crucial to note that subcellular components or isolated molecules alone cannot sustain life independently. They need to be organized within a cell to function properly. This means that cellular organization isn't just a characteristic of life, but an absolute essential for life to exist at all. Without this organization into cells, life as we know it simply cannot manifest. This clearly highlights why cellular organization is a defining feature of all living organisms. Consciousness is fundamentally defined by an organism's sensitivity to its environment. This means it has the ability to sense what's happening around it and respond accordingly to various stimuli, whether they are physical, chemical, or biological. This characteristic is widespread. Every organism, from simple prokaryotes to complex eukaryotes, reacts to environmental cues like light, water, temperature, and even pollutants. However, what really sets humans apart is self-consciousness, which is a deeper level of awareness where we recognize ourselves as individuals. This self-awareness is unique to humans and highlights the complexity of our consciousness compared to other organisms. Here, we have a table summarizing the defining features of life by comparing different biological processes. Let's break it down. Growth refers to the increase in mass and number, but interestingly, it's not considered a defining property because even non-living objects can show external accumulation, which is called extrinsic growth. Next is reproduction, the production of offspring. Although important, it's also not a definitive property of life since some living beings like worker bees, mules, and infertile humans don't reproduce. Now, metabolism is a crucial factor. It involves all the biochemical reactions within the cells and is considered a defining property because it occurs continuously in every living cell without exception. Cellular organization is another essential feature. Living organisms are made up of cells, which are the basic units of life. Without cells, life as we know it simply cannot exist. Finally, consciousness, which involves sensing and responding to the environment, is also a defining property. This is universal among living beings, though humans have the unique capacity for self-consciousness. These key points help us understand what truly characterizes life beyond the obvious physical changes. Here, we're focusing on two fundamental concepts, diversity and taxonomy. Diversity refers to the variety of life forms we see in the natural world, from plants and animals to microorganisms. It's what makes ecosystems vibrant and resilient. Taxonomy, on the other hand, is the science of classifying these living organisms. It helps us organize and understand the relationships between different species by grouping them based on shared characteristics. Together, exploring biodiversity and taxonomy allows us to appreciate the complexity of life and the methods scientists use to study it systematically. This foundational knowledge is crucial for everything from conservation efforts to advancing biological research. Biodiversity essentially means the variety of life on Earth, encompassing all the different kinds of organisms. Each unique organism belongs to a specific species, giving us an incredible array of life forms. So far, scientists have described between 1.7 and 1.8 million species, but we believe that millions more are yet to be discovered. This vast diversity is why having a well-organized classification system is so important. It helps us study and understand the rich complexity of life around us. Ultimately, biodiversity highlights the amazing variety that exists in the living world. Here, we're looking at the challenge posed by local names for organisms. Different languages and regions often have their own names for the same species, and even within one country, these names can vary widely. This creates a lot of confusion, especially for scientists trying to share and compare information globally. To address this, the scientific community developed standard naming systems. These ensure that every organism is assigned one unique, universally accepted scientific name. This consistency is crucial for clear communication and forms the backbone of how we classify and study life. Here, we're looking at the three fundamental pillars of taxonomy. First is identification, which involves accurately describing an unknown organism so we can find its place within an existing classification system. It's like figuring out exactly what the organism is by observing its features. Next, we have nomenclature, which is about assigning a scientific and standardized name to the organism, following internationally accepted rules. This ensures that scientists worldwide refer to the same organism using the same name, avoiding confusion. Lastly, classification involves organizing organisms into hierarchical groups, or taxa, based on their shared and observable characteristics. This structured grouping helps us understand relationships between different organisms and the diversity of life. Together, these three processes form the backbone of taxonomy. Here we have Carolus Linnaeus, often called the father of modern taxonomy. He is best known for popularizing binomial nomenclature, which is a standard way of naming every organism using two parts. The first part is the genus, and the second is the species. This system uses Latin or Latinized words because Latin is a dead language. This means its grammar and vocabulary remain stable over time, ensuring the names don't change or lose meaning. This consistent naming method has been fundamental in organizing and classifying the vast diversity of life. Linnaeus's contribution through binomial nomenclature remains a cornerstone of biological science today. Here, we're looking at the key international codes that govern the scientific naming of living organisms. First, we have the ICBN, which stands for the International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. This code sets the rules for how plants are scientifically named, ensuring consistency and clarity in botanical classification. Next is the ICZN, the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature. It serves the same purpose but for animals, making sure every animal name is unique and universally accepted. Then, there's the ICNB, which covers bacteria nomenclature, providing a standard framework for naming bacterial species. Finally, we have the ICTV, the International Committee on Taxonomy of Viruses, which is responsible for the naming and classification of viruses. These specialized codes are crucial because they prevent duplication and confusion, making certain that each scientific name is one of a kind and properly regulated across the globe. This system of international codes forms the backbone of biological classification and allows scientists everywhere to communicate clearly about the diversity of life. When we talk about the rules of binomial nomenclature, there are several key points to keep in mind. First, biological names are always written in Latin or are Latinized, and to highlight their Latin origin, they are printed in italics. This is a universal convention that helps distinguish scientific names from common names. Next, these names follow a two-word format. The first word is the genus, which is always capitalized, and the second word is the specific epithet, or species name, which starts with a small letter. For example, in Mangifera indica, Mangifera is the genus and indica is the species. When these names are handwritten, the convention changes slightly. Each word must be underlined separately to indicate their Latin origin, while in printed text, italics are used instead. By following these rules consistently, scientists around the world can communicate clearly and avoid confusion when referring to different species. Here, we see the concept of taxonomic hierarchy, which is essentially the systematic arrangement of living organisms from the most specific level, the species, all the way up to the broadest category, the kingdom. This hierarchy helps us organize and understand the immense diversity of life by grouping organisms based on shared characteristics. Starting at the bottom, species are the most precise group, consisting of individuals that can interbreed. As we move upwards, these species are grouped into genera, then families, orders, classes, phyla, and finally kingdoms, the largest and most inclusive category. This systematic grouping not only brings order to the complexity of life but also reflects evolutionary relationships among organisms. Understanding taxonomic hierarchy is fundamental for studying biology and making sense of the natural world around us. Here, we're looking at the taxonomic hierarchy, which is how scientists classify living organisms based on shared characteristics. Starting at the most specific level, we have the species. A species is a group of individuals that share fundamental morphological similarities, essentially meaning they look and function alike in important ways. Moving up, we have the genus, which is a collection of closely related species that share common features. Next is the family, which groups together related genera. These are less similar to each other than species within a genus but still connected through shared traits. Finally, at the top of this hierarchy, we have the kingdom, which is the broadest and most inclusive category in biological classification. It encompasses a wide variety of organisms, grouped together based on very general similarities. This hierarchical system helps us organize and understand the immense diversity of life on Earth. Here, we're looking at two fundamental ranks in biological classification, species and genus. Starting with species, this is the most basic unit of classification. It refers to a group of individual organisms that share key morphological traits and can interbreed freely. For example, in Homo sapiens, sapiens is the species name, and similarly, in Solanum tuberosum, which is the potato, tuberosum identifies the species. Moving up one level, we have the genus. This groups together closely related species that share more common characteristics compared to species in other genera. For instance, the genus Solanum includes species like tuberosum, which is potato, melongena, which is eggplant, and nigrum, known as marcoy. Understanding these ranks helps us see how organisms are categorized based on their evolutionary relationships and shared features. Here, we're exploring the taxonomic ranks of family, order, and class, which are ways to organize plants and animals based on their shared characteristics. Starting with family, this rank groups plant species that share both vegetative and reproductive features. For example, the Solanaceae family includes plants like Solanum, Petunia, and Datura, which have similar traits. Moving up, the order encompasses several related families that show a few common features. Take the order Polemoniales, which groups families like Solanaceae and Convolvulaceae together because of certain shared characteristics. Then, at a higher level, we have the class. This category includes one or more related orders. For instance, the class Mammalia contains orders like Primata, which includes monkeys, apes, and humans, and Carnivora, which includes cats, dogs, and tigers. So, to summarize, the ranks we're looking at, family, order, and class, help us understand how plants and animals are grouped based on similarities, from more specific to more general categories. When we talk about biological classification, the highest category we use is the kingdom. This is the broadest level and includes all animals under kingdom Animalia and all plants under kingdom Plantae. Moving down a level, we have phylum, which is used mainly for classifying animals. Phyla are grouped based on shared characteristics, such as having a notochord or a dorsal hollow nerve cord, which you see in the phylum Chordata. For plants, instead of phylum, we use the term division. Divisions group together classes of plants that share similar traits. So, in summary, the key ranks we're focusing on here are kingdom at the top, then phylum for animals, and division for plants. This hierarchical system helps us organize and understand the diversity of life more clearly. Here we have a table that illustrates the taxonomic ranks of some common organisms. On the left, you can see the common names, such as man, housefly, mango, and wheat. Moving to the right, the table details their biological names, which are the scientific names used universally to identify species accurately. Further columns break down the classification hierarchy, from genus all the way through to phylum or division. For example, humans belong to the genus Homo, family Hominidae, and class Mammalia, within the phylum Chordata. The housefly, on the other hand, is classified in the genus Musca and belongs to the class Insecta, within the phylum Arthropoda. Plants like mango and wheat are classified differently, located in the division Angiospermae, highlighting that they are flowering plants, and further divided into dicotyledons and monocotyledons respectively. This table demonstrates how taxonomy organizes diverse life forms into a structured hierarchy, making it easier to study and understand their evolutionary relationships. It's a clear reminder of the incredible diversity of life and the systematic approach scientists use to classify it. As we move up the taxonomic hierarchy from species to kingdom, the number of shared characteristics between organisms decreases. In other words, organisms classified at lower levels, like species, have a lot more in common with each other compared to those grouped at higher, broader categories. This leads to a key point about classification complexity. At higher taxonomic levels, it becomes much more challenging to determine relationships between different groups. This is mainly because there are fewer obvious, shared traits to use as links between these broader categories. So, the general trend in taxonomy is that similarity diminishes and classification becomes more complex as we move to higher ranks. Now, let's go over some review questions and answers that highlight high-yield points for NEET and board exams. One important question is, why is metabolism considered a defining feature of life, whereas growth is not? The key reason is that metabolism takes place in every living cell without exception, and it does not happen in non-living things. On the other hand, growth can occur in non-living things, such as boulders or mountains, through the external accumulation of matter. This distinction makes metabolism a fundamental characteristic that defines life. This slide is designed as an excellent study reference for Class 11 biology students preparing for their exams.